Hello, Dazzle. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me today. I am glad that you are here. Today, I'm going to be talking about the game Darkest Tales, and there will be spoilers. So if you haven't played it yet, then you will want to come back to this later. The Darkest Tales is an intriguing take on fairy tales, flipping the script on stories that we grew up with and turning them into something much darker. The game reimagines classic fairy tales, often taking well-known characters and twisting them in ways that align with a more sinister and mature narrative. One of the standout examples is the encounter with Little Red Riding Hood, a key moment that brilliantly showcases the game's commitment to its darker tone. In the Darkest Tales, you face a version of Little Red Riding Hood that feels almost unrecognizable from the traditional tale. Instead of being the innocent, sweet girl who needs rescuing from the big bad wolf, Little Red has become something far more dangerous. She is not a victim, but a predator, a feral, vengeful version of herself who has embraced the wildness and cruelty of the forest. The red cloak, once a symbol of her vulnerability, is now part of her predatory persona, steeped in blood and signaling her transformation into a wolf-like figure herself. This dynamic change speaks to one of the game's central themes, the loss of innocence. The fairy tale world we knew is gone, replaced by something twisted and brutal. Little Red's transformation is a stark symbol of this, as she no longer is the victim, but rather has become a malevolent force. Her character, once a symbol of childhood vulnerability, now embodies a world where innocence has been corrupted and discarded. This transformation also plays into the idea of trauma. Little Red reflects how someone once wronged can become consumed by vengeance and anger. Rather than overcoming her past, she's been shaped by it, allowing the darkness to take hold. Her rage and aggression represent the long-term effects of trauma, showing how a victim can eventually become what they once feared. One of the most fascinating things about this encounter is how it plays with our expectations. Going into the story, most players would expect some version of the classic dynamic. Little Red Riding Hood running from the wolf, needing help, or maybe even overcoming the wolf herself. But the game subverts that. The familiar narrative doesn't play out. Instead, the character we once felt sympathy for has become someone monstrous, blurring the lines between the hero and the villain. This deviation from the original fairy tale isn't just for shock value. It deepens the game's themes of corrupted childhood fantasies. The world of the Darkest Tales is one where happy endings are illusions, and innocence is something long lost. Little Red's fate is a reflection of that world, where the struggle for survival has stripped away any remnants of her former self. This shift also echoes a twisted coming-of-age journey. In traditional coming-of-age tales, characters grow through challenges, gaining wisdom and strength while retaining their core goodness. However, the Darkest Tales presents a far more cynical version of this growth. Little Red's maturation is not about wisdom or strength, but about hardening, losing her innocence entirely and adopting the cruelty of the world around her. Instead of evolving into a hero, she morphs into something more monstrous, suggesting that in this darkened world, coming of age isn't about enlightenment, but about surviving at any cost. This bleak transformation highlights how the loss of innocence can lead to a twisted form of adulthood, where idealism is a distant memory and only the fierce can endure. Another theme that the game explores through the characters like Little Red Riding Hood is the moral ambiguity of the world. Unlike the traditional fairy tales where there's a clear distinction between good and evil, the Darkest Tale operates in shades of gray. Little Red's actions, while violent and aggressive, don't come without cause. The wolf that once tormented her is still part of her story, but now she has taken his role in a way that suggests that she has been deeply shaped by the trauma that she has endured. While she's certainly become more dangerous, there's still a tragic undercurrent in her character. She is a product of her environment, consumed by the darkness around her. This dynamic also taps into the concept of the cycle of violence, where victims of abuse or trauma are often at higher risk of becoming abusers themselves. In The Darkest Tales, Little Red's transformation into a wolf-like figure mirrors the behaviors of the creature that once tormented her, illustrating how those who suffer violence can internalize that aggression and then perpetuate it. The game subtly suggests that her actions, though brutal, are learned responses to the pain that she endured, and that without intervention, trauma can breed further cruelty. This cycle underscores a deeper tragedy in her character. While she once might have represented innocence, the relentless darkness of her world has left her trapped in a role that she was once victimized, continuing the very violence that broke her. It speaks to the harsh reality that without healing, victims can become mirrors of their abusers, trapped in a cycle of harm. This blurring of morality adds complexity to the game's narrative. The characters in The Darkest Tales are rarely pure good or evil. They're often survivors of a world that has forced them to become something darker in order to cope. This approach challenges the player to rethink the archetypes that we have been conditioned to accept in fairy tales, and consider the ways in which trauma, loss, and survival can profoundly alter someone. The game's treatment of Little Red Riding Hood encapsulates what makes The Darkest Tales so compelling. By taking familiar stories and reimagining them in darker, more complex ways, the game forces us to confront the loss of innocence and the harsh realities of trauma. Little Red's transformation from a victim into a predator is not just a twist for shock value, but a deep exploration of how trauma shapes identity, often leading to a cycle of violence. Her journey also mirrors a warped coming-of-age story, where survival replaces growth and cruelty becomes a means of coping within a brutal world. This moral ambiguity, where characters straddle the line between hero and villain, challenges the traditional fairy tale's binary distinction between good and evil. The Darkest Tales doesn't just subvert expectations, it uses this subversion to delve into the darker aspects of human nature, offering a reflection on how trauma and loss can fundamentally reshape a person. In this twisted fairy tale world, happy endings are illusions, and the characters are left grappling with the shadows of their past. Well, that's it for my rambling today. Thanks for coming and spending some time with me. If you like my rambling, then click on that like button. It really does help. And until we talk again, you guys be sure to take care of yourselves. Bye!